want to remind you that tomorrow night is Monday night for the Master. We've got a lot of great things we're going to do. We're going to be, obviously, those that enjoy car making, we're going to continue doing that. We have new projects going on, like Oak Lodge. We're getting to decorate, design, if you will, for like the fourth floor kind of family entertainment room. There's only one entity in Nashville that's got to do that. It's the Nashville Predators. So it'd be nice to have us be a part of that, and we can put Bibles in it. We can, make it to where, obviously they know that it's from a church, and we're continuously going to help out with that once they get finished and adding on the expansion there, which is really neat. But we have Shower the People that's coming here every Tuesday night, and that's a non-profit that reaches out to the homeless. Again, as I may mention to you this morning, we can't even fix homelessness. It's too big. We can do something. We can serve. So that's an opportunity where we can serve and do that. Also, I want us to, this is an idea, a station that making cards. I think it'd be really neat as we continue going to Mary Queen of Angels, and as we're going to also Brookdale at Melmead. Those that are attending, hand them a card that we've written. Encourage them, invite them, open up the opportunity. Hey, if there's something we can do and pray for, let us know, and open up that connection. It's a ministry, and we're invited in these places to preach the gospel, and I think that's a blessing, and that's an opportunity, and I want us to really kind of take a part of that. So really, Monday night for the Master is like going to a grocery. You get to pick and choose what's in your comfort level and what you're able to do as we serve God in this community. Again, there's just a lot that we have to be mindful of prayer-wise and people, so be mindful of these. I think Jeff does a great job in putting that together in the bulletin, having that sheet. Just really, it would be a great idea just going through and just praying for these people, because I think it's so important. I know from experience, and you do as well, when someone mentions us by name, I can't think of anything more powerful than mentioning someone's name. I want to talk about tonight a passage that we're really familiar with, but maybe kind of some thoughts on looking at it. The idea of tonight's lesson is build his church. I love the clip art there. It has nothing to do with a building. It has everything to do with the people. This is a big pet peeve of mine. Hey, where are we going today? We're going to go to church. How do you do that? I don't know. And you think about how we use it very loosely, that, we take away from what Jesus said and what it really is. We've heard lessons, what it's about. It's about us as people. This is just a convenience. It's a nice convenience to sit and have dry when it's raining and warm when it's cold and all those things. But really what the church is about is us. We're the body of Christ. So I want us to think about what Jesus said in the context of him saying it when it comes to building his church. There was a national poll, and a man was just answering question after question. When it came to church preference, his response was red brick. There are a lot of responses when it comes to the church, isn't there? It's been said that Tennessee and in the southeast is known as the Bible Belt. I don't think that's true. In my opinion, especially looking at Davidson County, I think we are a religious belt. You can go to the right or to the left, and you won't go far until you'll run across Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, and the list goes on and on. We are a state and a county that is mixed with all different types of beliefs and traditions. You could go into a store, in any local store, and you could buy a Buddha statue and put it in your house, and shine it for good luck. I mean, there is just all over the place of different ideas and beliefs. And people are full of opinion when it comes to these things. And so I just think about the landscape here, just in a 3-mile radius of where we're at. with people that have no foundation whatsoever. I mean, forget about different Christian churches. Think about religious groups, whether it's Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, whether it's Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, whatever. But the idea is there's a lot of different diversity, and I'm not saying that's a good thing. It's just out there, and people have their opinions about things. But I want you to know that in Matthew chapter 16, there was a lot of people that had a lot of different opinions when it came to Jesus as well. The idea of people having various opinions about who God is, about how God works, about what God does and this and that, there's nothing new under the sun, as the great teacher reminds us in Ecclesiastes. The principle is still the same. Confusion, superstition. Interesting, in Matthew 16, the very first time in the New Testament we find the word church mentioned. Who says it? It's Jesus. He doesn't say in Jerusalem. He doesn't say it at the temple. He's outside of Jerusalem. In fact, he's a good distance away from Jerusalem. He's in predominantly what is a Gentile area, Caesarea Philippi, where he says that great statement as Peter's response to what Peter says of him. So in this context, there's this, Jesus knows that people are saying different things, but he wants his disciples. He's curious what they have to say. And so we have this identity crisis about who Jesus, what people think that Jesus is. We want to know what his disciples think, but then it comes down to really what it always should come down to, and that is what God has said. Jesus, what he says for us to do. And so I want us to think about what Jesus says here in this particular context, and we need to take his words at heart. As I may mention at the beginning of the first slide, it's his church we're talking about. Not mine, not yours, it's his. If you purchased anything, you're going to say it's yours, isn't it? He purchased it with his own blood, Acts 20, verse 28. First thing I want to share with you is this. What do men say? What do men say? If you read the context that Alex read for us, he says that in verse 13. What do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? And boy, there was all kinds of things. If there's one thing people have, and that's opinions, isn't it? And they're quick to give their opinion about whatever it may be, especially with religion. And as we see here, we see it came with the identity of Jesus. Now again, as I may mention to you, we know exactly where they're at. They're in Caesarea Philippi, and we're told that in verse 13. Caesarea Philippi is a very interesting city because it's really deep trenched in idolatry. It was predominantly Gentiles that were there, but if you go back, you see reference to where Baal was worshipped there in Caesarea Philippi. If you study anything about Greek mythology, that the Greek lowercase god of Pan was worshipped there. And then there was Herod, in tribute to Caesar Augustus as Rome being God, that he built the temple there in honor of Caesar Augustus, Caesarea Philippi. So in this city that had all these superstitions and confusions and beliefs and thoughts and different this and that, we find in this context of Jesus want to know what people think of who he is. And I love that he's there. He's not back at home base in Capernaum. He's not in Jerusalem. He's outside, if you will, and asking these important questions with his disciples. And so, sure enough, they know it. They know the answer to that very quickly. What other people say about him? If you look before Matthew 16, in Matthew chapter 14, some believe that John the Baptist had been resurrected, and that's who Jesus was. If you look at verses 1 and 2 there. So they had a lot of things were said. So notice, disciples said, well, some say you're John the Baptist. Some say you're Elijah. Some say you're Jeremiah or some other prophet. It's amazing, isn't it? in the same context. Jesus was among them in the flesh, and that still be that much confusion about who he is. Why should it surprise us? Thousands of years later, when people have questions about religion and about what's right, what's not, what's the way to go, what's the right name for God, who is the God, is it God as one, is it God in multiple, whatever these ideas and thoughts that are out there that people are gravitating trying to figure out answers, it should not surprise us, because Jesus was with them and among them. And they still had that confusion about his identity and trying to figure out who he was. And I would say to us, as we look at this, that people will say a lot, and they say a lot about things. And their confusion about Jesus was that obviously they didn't really know who Jesus was or is. Their confusion was with him while he was still there. And as I mentioned, it's not surprising to us that people still struggle with the identity of Christ, still struggle with who he really is, and is this really true? As they said, some thought he was Elijah, he was Jeremiah the prophets. There was even a very few that believed out of spite that he was a demon. Clearly there was a variety of opinions. And clearly what they said was very confusing. But you know what? In my short term of life, and you know this as well, they say a lot, don't they? The crowd, the opposers, those that are attacking, those that are against, those that are contradicting, those that are whatever it may be, whoever they are, still figuring that out, they say a lot about what we are, who we are, and what we're about. And so we see in this that I think the point should be made is we really can never, and I had a professor to always say, be very careful to never say never and always. But I can say it here. We can never make a true decision about Jesus Christ by taking a poll of the crowd. We can't. I can go out to the crowd, into the community, and ask 100 people, who is Jesus Christ? Or who is Jesus? And I'm going to get some different answers out of it. And we see that. And so I would think for us that the point is that what the crowd or what the statistics or what the majority says doesn't make it right. And that's hard for some people, because the flow of the world seems, well, this is okay, it's acceptable, because majority of the people say it is. So it's got to be okay if a lot of, it seems like very intelligent people say it's okay. Then it's got to be okay, right? And we know that's not the case, is it? It's not the case with the identity of Christ and who he is. The doctrine of who Jesus Christ is not governed by the majority. It's not governed by what they say. It's about us and our personal conviction of what we gather from his word and how he's been clearly conveyed to us in God's written word. It's important for us to understand that people will continue saying a lot of things about Christianity, about the church, about Jesus, and we'll continue as time progresses, if God wills, that as we go through life, we're going to continue to hear more, because nothing's new, nothing has changed in that fact. Because people are full of saying whatever they want to say, a matter of opinion. But Jesus wasn't really about knowing what people's opinion was about, especially when their opinion was wrong. So he didn't really entertain what they were thinking. But he did want to know something else, and that is this. What do you say? What do you say to his own disciples? That's a loaded question, isn't it? Because Not only does he want to know what they might say in this moment, but are you persuaded? Are you pressured? Is the ministry and the people and the constant going against, is it affecting maybe what you've been taught, how maybe you've changed from that? And I love what Peter says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Boy, that's a big confession, isn't it? When he says you're the Christ, that goes back to Old Testament. He is the anointed one. He is the Messiah. He's the one that's been prophesied by the prophets of old, that's been predicted hundreds of years before it ever happened. He is the one. You are the one. And he makes it very clear by saying, you are the Christ. You're not just Jesus. You're not just someone that's a rabbi that's from Nazareth. You are the Christ. And notice his identity where it's founded. He's the Son of the living God. He approaches not only two aspects of Jesus, in my opinion, this great confession. It looks at the humanity of who Jesus is. You're the Son of the living God, as he was born of Mary, but also his divinity. If you're the Son of the living God, then you're God. You're God also. And he is God. But you're also the Christ, which is the Messiah, which also points to the divinity of Jesus, which shows the identity that in that great small statement of confession, Peter was looking at the dual nature of who Jesus was when he was in the flesh. God in the flesh. Yes, he was human, but he was also God. And as you look at the many titles there, and so it's interesting, as Peter makes that confession, it wasn't because his parents were very smart and they told him that. It wasn't because he just somehow figured it out and it just dawned on him. But what does Jesus say? How did Peter know that? What revealed that to him? He says, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but only my Father who is in heaven. God had revealed what Peter just confessed. God revealed that. It's not that he discovered by looking at a rock and say, you know what, this rock had to come from someone. I bet it's Christ, the Son of the living God. He didn't look at the sky. He didn't consider, any great teacher that was there at the Temple of Jerusalem spouting out whatever they were teaching. It was that God revealed it to him. We see many times in the Scriptures, especially as Paul alludes to, about the gospel of Christ and how it's considered foolish by those of the world. And let them consider that foolish, how God can take something that what the world sees as weak or foolish or nothing to deal with, and the greatness that comes through that. And so as he makes that great statement, it's not an opinion that he's making. He doesn't say it as an opinion, does he? His tone's not, I think you're the Christ, the Son of the living God. He's saying it as a fact. It's a confession. A confession that we all have to make, don't we? My Bible reads, we must confess Jesus before others if we want him to confess us before our God who's in heaven. Confession is just as necessary as every other step that's necessary for us to become a child of God, right? So in this great confession, he reveals this great statement about who Jesus is. Peter revealed what God had spoken. God's word was spoken, and we must accept it by faith. The last thing that I love, he doesn't just end with that, But he builds upon what Peter just said about him to where I get my third point. That is this: what I say. Man, that's powerful. Because you go from the outer rim, this is the noise, this is the chatter, this is what people are saying. They don't have a clue, they're confused. What do you guys think? You getting more inward? Well, this great statement of confession. Then he builds upon it by first introducing this idea of a church. First time it's ever been used that we have in the Scriptures. It's amazing. I love it. It's beautiful, isn't it? He says, for you are Peter. And upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. Now, when you look and think about rock, rock is a very much symbolized as God in the Old Testament. And I can give you passage after passage. Look at Deuteronomy 32, verse 4. He is the rock. His work is perfect. Psalm 18, verse 2. Again, he's the rock. He's perfect. He's a fortress. And you see in this statement he mentions rock. Now, in the English language, in all of our translations, you're going to get something like Peter on this rock. You got to go deeper in the Greek text to see a difference between the two. Peter, Petros, means a stone. Your name's Peter. You are a stone. Upon this rock, Petra, and that means large rock. I will build my church, and the gates of Hades shall not prevail against it. The distinction in the Greek language is very, very big, considering what we just read about. There's a guy named Peter, and there's to talk about this rock. This idea of a stone compared to a large rock. Maybe your Bible has this. Mine has a footnote. When Jesus says that, it footnotes to Ephesians 2, verse 20. In Ephesians 2, verse 20, it talks about the prophets, it talks about the apostles, and what they built upon. They all built on the chief cornerstone, and that chief cornerstone is Jesus Christ. Paul reminds us in 1 Corinthians 3, verse 11, there's no other foundation which Jesus Christ has laid for us. Building upon what Jesus introduces to us as he brings about here with the disciples. So Jesus Christ, upon this rock, I will build my church. He's the large rock, not Peter. The significance is not a stone. The significance is with the large rock. The significance is not with Peter and who Peter would become and being something spectacular and great. It's with Jesus, who he continues to be. I will build my church. Notice the possessive plural noun. My church. Not your church. Not the other person's church. It's my church. Why could Jesus make that statement? Because of what he was about to do. He would die on the cross. And by dying on the cross, he purchased it with his own blood. Acts 20, verse 28. A blood payment, if you will. The word church there in the Greek means ecclesia, and what it means is it means called out from. We've been called out of what? Out of dark, out of the world, into the light. We are to be the light of the world. We are to be a city that's set upon a hill, just as he is the light. In him there is no darkness at all. And so we are, the church there is not upon this rock I'm going to build, 4 walls and a roof and, a nice 2-level there, and there's going to be a nice, it's talking about people, us. And we see this come to fruition, especially as Jesus is resurrected in the beginning of, as we see Acts chapter 1 and 2. So very important for us to understand a lot of things. Number one, as we're reminded of what church is, it's not this location. It's not these walls. It's not the PowerPoint. It's not the podium or the clicker. It is us. We are the church. Now, what makes that special is understanding what Jesus establishes with the great confession there away from Jerusalem in some Caesarea Philippi that's steeped in all kinds of religious beliefs, making this profound statement. I'm going to build my church. Let me tell you something. If Jesus builds something, if God builds something, it's for good, isn't it? It lasts. I love how he says the gates of Hades, death itself will not prevail against it. In Hebrews chapter 12, we get this vision, we get this beautiful description of all the myriads of angels and just innumerable hosts that are going to be with God. But you know who else is going to be there? The church. The Lord's church. The beauty of what we're a part of is not something that ends at death. It doesn't leave us. It's not like we're out of the club, if you will, when we say our last breath. Death does not prevail against it. He made sure of that by being resurrected on that third day. So I would think as you look at this, we see that as we look at any institution, whether it be marriage is broken by death. Governments, they fall, they crumble. The church continues. And a great study is to see through the Dark Ages, to see throughout the Renaissance, to see the Restoration, to see the story, how it preserved, I believe, through God's providential hand, for us to have, without a shadow of a doubt, a copy translated copy of his written word, for us to read and understand and reach the same conclusion that Peter and these other apostles reached, that he is the Christ, the Son of the living God, and it is his church that we're a part of. We're a part of his body. And as believers, we are the extension of that. As he is the head, we are an extension of that as we continue to live. As Philip prayed in his prayer, emphasis on being a love for one another, but also into the community. Think about the song so often. It's so simple yet so profound. They will know that we are Christians by what? By our love. By our love. They will know that we are Christians by our love. No greater love than man has this than lay down his life for his friends. There's no greater act or demonstration of love than what Jesus has done for us. And all this plays out with this one fact. We are a part of something very special. And I don't know how you got to where you're at when it comes to the church. But whether that be a mom or a dad, whether that be a friend, whether that was a traveling preacher, whether that was a teacher of some sort, I hope that we're grateful. That we're really grateful for the influence that they had to lead us to understand the truth and to become a member of his church. And here's the question for us. Who will I be for someone else? Have young eyes. Have visiting eyes that are looking, that are searching. They're trying to figure out how the world works and how things go about. We be that person to them as whoever it was for us, so that they can reach the same conclusion as us, that we are part of something glorious and beautiful, that death cannot prevail against it. Also, I'm going to select the appropriate song we're going to stand and sing, and if we can help assist anyone, whatever needs you may have, as we've had the example today of two grown men coming forward and needing strength, carrying a heavy burden. There's nothing heavier than carrying the load that God wants us to cast to him. We have to be willing to give it to him. And we have to have the courage to understand that, you know what, I need help. I need God. I need God to be God in my life. And I need to be dedicated to him as best I can. If we can help you with that, putting on Christ in baptism, making a great confession, asking for strength, you're dedicating your life. We are here because we understand the need for that for ourselves. As together we all stand and sing.